Today, we're going to dive into a landmark case from Tamil Nadu that truly shook the entire nation. It's a story that starts with something pretty minor, but spirals into an absolutely horrific tragedy. And it's about the long, difficult fight for justice that came after.
So let's start with a number, just one number, 9. Now, what does this number mean? Well, it's not just a digit. It's really the conclusion to a story of unimaginable brutality.
9 is the number of police officers who were sentenced to death in a custodial death case involving a father and his son. And this wasn't just any verdict. It was a powerful statement against an abuse of power in the most terrible way imaginable. So this historic verdict came from the Madurai First Additional Sessions Court, and the judge was incredibly clear about it. The deaths of the father and son, they weren't natural. They weren't from some illness. The court confirmed, without a doubt, that they died because of the violence they suffered while in police custody.
So how on earth did it get to this point? The craziest part is that it all started with something that seems so small, so minor. The victims were P. Jayaraj, who was a 58-year-old businessman, and his 31-year-old son, Jay Binnix. And their story begins on just a regular night during the COVID-19 lockdown. So you have two totally different stories here. On one hand, the official police version was simple. Jayaraj was arrested because he violated the lockdown rules. But on the other hand, what the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, uncovered was something else entirely. A far, far more sinister reality of brutal torture and murder inside that police station.
And when you look at the timeline, it's devastating. It shows you just how fast everything went so horribly wrong. Think about it. On June 19th, Jayaraj gets arrested. His son Binnix goes to the station to see what's going on, and he gets detained too. Just 3 days later, on the 22nd, Binnix is dead. And the very next day, his father, Jayaraj, is gone too. The speed of this whole tragedy is what really grabbed the nation's attention.
This, of course, begs the question, what in the world really happened inside the Sathankulam police station? Well, according to the CBI, when Binnix showed up and started asking questions about his father's arrest, he was detained right alongside him. And what followed wasn't an interrogation. It was hours and hours of just unimaginable torture for both men.
And this is a really crucial point to understand. The CBI report makes it clear that this violence wasn't some kind of accident or an interrogation that just got a little out of hand. No, this was deliberate. This was a calculated act. The report says they were beaten to teach them a lesson. Okay, and the details that came out of the investigation, they're just stomach-turning. Both father and son were apparently stripped of their clothes. They were taken one by one, forced onto a wooden table, held down so they couldn't move, and then just brutally beaten with lathis for hours. And then, as if that wasn't horrific enough, there's this. In what can only be described as an act of sheer cruelty and a clear attempt to cover their tracks right away, Jayaraj and Binnix were allegedly forced to clean their own blood off the station floor. It was a way to humiliate them and destroy evidence from the very start.
So when the news broke, first that Binnix had died on June 22nd, and then, the very next day, his father, it just lit a match. The country exploded. Protest erupted everywhere, people demanding justice, demanding an end to police brutality. The public outcry was massive, and it was impossible for anyone to ignore.
This, right here, is one of the most chilling details of the entire case. Before they even took the terribly injured men to the hospital, the police supposedly asked relatives to bring dark-colored clothes for them. And you have to ask yourself, why would they do that? Well, the answer is pretty clear: to hide the bloodstains. It shows they knew just how bad the injuries were and that they were already deep into a cover-up. Now, with all this public pressure building up, the Madras High Court stepped in. They took what's called suo motu cognizance of the case, which basically means the court decided to take action on its own, without anyone even filing a petition. That's how serious this was. And that move led to the CBI taking over the whole investigation, with the goal of finally getting to the truth. And once the CBI got involved, the evidence they uncovered, well, it just completely tore the police's story to shreds. I mean, look at this. DNA from both Jayaraj and Binnix was found on the station walls and on the lathis themselves. The postmortem report flat out confirmed they died from being beaten. You had testimony from 50 eyewitnesses. And all the attempts to cover it up, like throwing away bloody clothes and calling in a cleaning crew, just became more proof of their guilt. So this whole process, the investigation, the court case. It took years. It was a long, painful journey for the family of Jayraj and Benix. But finally, a day of reckoning did come. And on March 23, 2024, the verdict was in. Judge G. Muthukumaran found the accused officers guilty, not just of using too much force, but of straight-up murder. And on top of that, of a calculated attempt to destroy evidence. The court made it official. They weren't just protectors who failed. They were the ones who committed the crime. So, what was the final count? 10 officers were originally accused in the case. One of them had actually died from COVID-19 during the trial. The other 9? All of them were sentenced to death for their crimes. It's a sentence that really reflects the absolute brutality of what they did. You know, a case like this, it's a stark and honestly terrifying reminder of what can happen when power is abused and how crucial accountability is. It brings up some really tough questions about justice, punishment, and what needs to change to make sure tragedies like this never, ever happen again. So we want to leave you with this to think about. What is your opinion on the court's verdict?